Hey neighbor, welcome back to Beyond ARTV. My name is John. It's time for another installment of News It or Lose It. I am so sick of talking about this because musicians, artists out there just cannot seem to stop fucking up on a massive scale, allegedly. And the latest of these stories involves the Canadian alternative and art rock and a lot of other things band Arcade Fire, specifically their frontman, Win Butler. Now, the band was already having a relatively tough year because Win's brother, Will Butler, exited the band. He had played synth, bass, a lot of different instruments. They're an eclectic outfit. I've personally never really gotten into the band a ton, but I always respected the fact that they had built up such a strong, loyal following from relatively small grassroots. Starting out, they were a big, scrappy success story, as Pitchfork put it. And since I said Pitchfork's name, they're the ones who broke this story. I wanted to comb through this article with you guys because there's a lot packed in, and obviously we can't get to everything. I will leave a link for the full Pitchfork coverage in the description down below, and I highly recommend going to check that out straight from the source yourself. But essentially, Win Butler, the frontman of Arcade Fire, is accused of sexual misconduct with 4 women, sexual assault by 1 woman, and the other 3 cases being misconduct, unwanted advances, and maybe that might be the exchanging of explicit photos that were not requested, and just a series of events that really paints him in a very bad light. And first and foremost, obviously, heart goes out to the alleged victims here. It seems like after having gone through this entire article a few times, there is concrete, solid evidence backed up by screenshots and even more that is showing these people put into very perilous situations, or else ones that were very much unwanted and took a sexual turn. And an age gap is another big concern, but we will get into that too. If you're unfamiliar with the band, this is Win Butler, pictured on screen here, holding the guitar. He's a multi-instrumentalist. A lot of the people in Arcade Fire are. Of course, like I said, his brother Will departed the band back in, I believe, March of this year. And he is also married to another bandmate since 2003, Regine Chassange. I'm so sorry, I probably butchered the name there, but Regine and him have been married for a long time, and they have both released statements denying these allegations, saying that everything is consensual, with Regine going on the defensive to say that Win Butler would never inappropriately or unwantedly touch a woman, but she did acknowledge the fact that Win Butler had cheated throughout their time together. What's got to be disappointing for the fans in particular is that they really did have a very good, virtuous public representation, and the reputation preceded them of being a charity-focused band at times, doing a lot of things for environmentalism, for causes that they believed in. And all of these events allegedly took place during a very dark time, as Win Butler described it during his life, from 2016 to 2020. And we get back to the age gap here. The alleged victims here, the 3 women that were devoted Arcade Fire fans that he had interactions with, were between the ages of 18 and 23, meaning he was between the ages of 36 and 39. All 4 of the people that were interviewed, one of them is gender fluid, 3 other women, all used pseudonyms so as to protect their identity. And this first one, Lily, says that they met when they were an art student, 21 years old, when Butler was 34, and they ended up kind of having some conversations that went a different way according to what this person, Lily, was feeling versus how Win perceived it. And it seems like that's very much a recurring theme of Win trying to frame these interactions as something they're not. And Win even went as far as to provide 65 different screenshots with proof or evidence, whatever you want to call it, trying to prove his side of the story, but they don't really line up with what some of the actual truths seem to be. You'll also notice a lot of "that did not happen" from the rememberings that Butler has based on what these women and these people are saying in response to it. There was a lot of back and forth with things that Win considered consensual, touching, whatever it might be, kissing, unwanted advances, photos, and it seems like he just had a habit of doing these things during this dark time and then blaming it on depression. And he also maintains his innocence, saying that, I stopped and left if anybody was feeling uncomfortable. But again, these are all things that have been contested. The reason I'm spending so much time on this first case here is that Lily, this person, actually had a job in the music industry, and Pitchfork viewed their resignation letter, and their allegations were against somebody that they didn't name at the time, but all of the evidence stacks up to back up Lily's story that it was when Butler, and the reason for having to leave was because of his inappropriate advances that was starting to make Lily feel extremely uncomfortable. We see another case here with an 18-year-old student, which is definitely disheartening considering a huge age gap was there, especially somebody who was 18 and somebody in their early to mid 30s. That just, it doesn't sit right, especially with the power dynamic. There's also a trend of him reaching out through social media like Instagram and just sending DMs, and it starts out innocent enough but then turns sexual, complimenting them and then demanding things like pictures or explicit photos, videos, just seeming kinks that he had, wanting these desires to be fulfilled, and he was using these women to get these things. Asking for nudes, trying to sext me, saying that yes, we did these things, we sent sext, but they were not unwelcome. At least that's what he was feeling. He's trying to read the room, saying that I was drunk when I texted her, and I misread her not answering that she just didn't get my text. Meanwhile, this person is saying that you blew up my phone unwanted. I am trying to basically cut communication with you, but you keep going on desperately, saying I couldn't take it anymore after a couple of months. And they kept touch a few more times, and I know a lot of people would try to poke the hole in the story and say, well, this person, they got on Arcade Fire's guest list, and they went to the Arcade Fire show, so she must have been okay with everything that happened. She basically said, well, I wanted to get something out of the relationship, at least for all the hell that I had to go through, so I got on the guest list and went to the show, and then cut communication. The final two stories, Sarah and Fiona, obviously pseudonyms once again. This is something where they were 23 and 20, and the demands add up. Everything is unfortunately stacking up. The evidence is weighing heavy, asking for certain poses, sexual acts, and saying certain lines to the camera, which is just insane for him to be demanding these things when these advances clearly were not wanted. And then it all circles back to this. Just promise me it's private and you won't tell people I messaged you or screen grab it or anything. It seems like, allegedly at least, Arcade Fire and Camp must have known that something big was coming, because as fans on Reddit have noticed, there's been very little promotion for their upcoming tour for their most recent album, which is kind of weird. You got a tour coming up, you might want to hype that up with interviews, announcements, teasing something, but it's really been kind of dead air for the most part. But when Butler went over some things about loving his wife Regine and also saying that I have had consensual relationships outside of my marriage, something that's obviously contested, but goes on to kind of detail this dark time in his life, and also mentioning that I've never touched a woman against her will, and any implication that I have is simply false. I vehemently deny any suggestion that I have forced myself on a woman or demanded sexual favors. That simply and unequivocally never happened. Regine's statement was a bit more succinct and to the point, with her saying, "Wynn is my soulmate, my songwriting partner, my husband, the father of my beautiful boy. He has been my partner in life and in music for 20 years. And for all the love in our lives, I have also watched him suffer through immense pain. I have stood by him because I know he is a good man who cares about this world, our band, his fans, friends, and our family. I've known Wynn since before we were quote-unquote famous, when we were just ordinary college students. I know what is in his heart, and I know that he has never and would never touch a woman without her consent, and I am certain he never did. He has lost his way, and he has found his way back. I love him, and I love the life we have created together." All in all, it seems like the funeral in the suburbs of Arcade Fireland, and their frontman is going down, and it seems like his wife is going to be on that sinking ship with him. I would love to know what you guys are thinking, especially if you've followed this band closely for a long time now. Is this something that strikes you as very surprising, or maybe there's been some out-of-pocket moments in the past that you've noticed, and in hindsight, with these new allegations coming to light, maybe you're seeing those situations from a different perspective? Any and all thoughts are welcome in the comments down below. And remember, this is an ongoing situation. There's a lot of sensitive material here, so I would appreciate you guys just being kind to each other as you discuss this down in the comments. Reminder to go check out the full article over on Pitchfork. I left a link to their coverage in the description down below. You can check out more of my stuff down there too. This was just some of my takeaway, some of my thoughts on the situation. Very disheartening to see this yet again from another frontman of yet another band. But alas, I will end the video here. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon for more on Beyond ARTV.